All right, what's good, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Fred Johnson IV. Mr. I'm going to graduate your favorite college success coach. And this is the College Access and Persistence podcast, y'all. This podcast is going to change the game. What I'm doing is I'm bringing on higher education professionals, leaders within the higher education and secondary space. And we're talking about how to improve outcomes for my minoritized students, particularly those students from Black and Brown backgrounds, from first gen backgrounds, right? And so I am excited. I'm excited to have my frat brother, a mentor also in this space, brother David Bocage. He is the assistant director and an academic coach in the Student Support Services program at Southern University at New Orleans. So, brother Bocage, thank you for hopping on the podcast. How you doing?
Oh, thank you so much, brother, for having me this afternoon. I appreciate you and this chance to just share the conversation with you about these very important topics today.
Awesome. And for those of y'all that are tuning in, the whole purpose and point of this podcast is to really share the best practices that are happening in the spaces of access and persistence, to foster more collaboration between all the professionals and departments that really lead to students being able to get to and graduate from college. So y'all, we about to dig in. Let's dig in.
So,
all right, my first question for you, brother Bocage, is how and why did you get into the field of education?
Wow, field of education. That's a question that's always asked, and me being an educator in the field from K through 12 and now in higher ed for the past upwards to 20 years now, I can honestly tell you that when I was in undergrad, I had a epiphany and a major change. So I will be quite honest with you. I was very technical and savvy with math and design. So I initially went into architecture, but then I started to delve in and really do some soul searching and really tried to figure out personally whether or not I was just doing it for the money and the status or in the titles, or was it a field that I would really envision enjoying in the years to come. So I meditated on it. I thought about it over a semester, and I said, I know a lot of teachers in my past that really had a major impact on who I am as a person and how I reached college to begin with. So I said, not only to just pay respects to them, but I came from a household of service, and my mother was a social worker for over 30 plus years. So I kind of meshed those two together, and I said, why not education? Why not as a Black male, being in the positions that I was in leadership and in organizations, why not go into a very reputable and respectable field? And I switched over to education, and I didn't look back since. And I can tell you it was very rewarding. Ever since I was student teaching up until my first year of teaching in middle school, and then rising to high school levels, and even being asked to teach in an alternative setting as well, for as they call, quote unquote, at-risk youth at the time. And I tend not to use that term, but now through my growth. But yeah, and at that point, of course, Hurricane Katrina happened. And I started some outreach work already before the hurricane landed with LSU Ag Center. And at that point, I was doing both. And I'm saying, well, I wasn't sure whether or not the teaching position was going to be there. So I went full-fledged into higher ed, which was the LSU Ag Center. And that was unique in a sense, because that really provided me a chance not only to remain very steadfast in the field of education K through 12 with the outreach programs, but to always gave me a chance to kind of go into an environment that I wasn't too particularly keen with, which is higher ed. So over the course of maybe 2 years, I was working with both. And when the hurricane hit, I was relocated with my family to Houston, Texas. And I had to make the decision on whether or not to remain with LSU or provided a chance to switch over and transfer to another university out there, which was Texas A&M, doing the same type of work. And ever since then, I remained in higher ed, found my niche, found a direct linkage to high school students and college, and discovering a huge void that existed because of the ill preparation of a lot of the students that were coming and being pipelined through our school system. So just to answer your question about education, it's multi-pronged, but it really it not only complements my interest, but it complements my background as well as the vision and the impact that I want to leave with the next generation.
Mm-hmm. Man, you have a wealth of knowledge in a bunch of different areas in the space of education. And something you said really stuck out to me that I wish someone would have talked to me about as a Black male pursuing a career in education. Is you just talked about like what it means to be a Black male in education and the impact. Can you speak to, because I think for me and maybe for a lot of Black males, when you're majoring in education or choosing a career in education, you usually just think the role of teacher. And as I've been able to gain more experience, I've been able to see there's a diversity of careers and paths that you can choose. Can you just kind of speak to when you changed your major, when you changed your career path, did you know where you wanted to go? How did you kind of increase your exposure? Or like, what would you say to the Black male that is in education that's solely thinking about teaching right now?
Well, first of all, like you mentioned, it's very diverse. If you're worried about climbing up the economic ladder, there are some streams right now that would allot you the chance to get into those areas where it can become lucrative. But if you aren't passionate about influencing the mind of the younger generation or the youth or the younger adult, if you're in higher ed, then don't get into the profession because you can get burned out very easily. You have to pace yourself. You cannot be forced in to a corner and pigeonholed into certain titles that they give to the Black male educator, which we are seeing trends right now in our field with them forcing upon the Black male educator disciplinary roles. Or, yes, you can stay in the classroom for so many years, but we expect you to climb up to the administrative level because we find you as a male figure to be more of an influence or an impact on those who are coming up underneath you, especially being produced as educators, preferably Black males. So I found it to be the case, and it's remaining constant, to be honest with you. And it's up to us. It behooves us to actually to really combat that notion that that's all we are, and that we have more to give than to just be the dean of students or the disciplinarian or just a certain type of teacher which holds some sort of athletic coaching position on the side or those sorts of things. So it's all stereotypical. I saw it to be the case firsthand. And just because I was very boisterous, I was outspoken, I kind of made my presence known in the first couple of years, that they said, well, maybe you should go back to graduate school and go into ed leadership. And as the case may be, I did. And I did earn the leadership degree, but so I made it work for me, but I didn't want to be always seen as the go-to for the person to handle situations with male students, or the father figure to those female students that don't have father figures at home. And that's a totally different topic all in of and of itself, because that's a trap. If you are led to believe that there are safe zones that exist, because in most cases they aren't, especially when you come out of college, which is some advice that I would lend to the young Black educator coming out. You will be challenged no matter what age of in your classroom from the female point of view. They will sometimes put you in a space where you would have to explain your role clearly to them in a way that wouldn't jeopardize your character or your livelihood. And me coming out of college at 22 and looking much younger than I am now, I was teaching my first year in 8th grade, and there were a lot of probing questions that I had to fray away from because I knew the stipulations of that. So that's some of the advice that I think I would give if I'm answering that question correctly. And some of the challenges that exist with Black male teachers in the field.
Oh, for sure. And see, that's if you're a Black male educator listening to this now, if you're still an undergrad, if you recently graduated, even if you have a wealth of experience in the field, that's the thing I was never told, is like how to navigate that space and understanding the value that you bring. Of course, when you choose the field of education, there are certain roles and things that you're going to take on in terms of the impact that you want to have on the young people you serve. But I think you made a really good point around it's understanding your value outside of certain moments, right? And understanding like there's a particular expertise, there's a certain level of skill that you also bring to the role, and to value yourself outside of some of the other areas where we know we just more naturally kind of step up in the lives of the students that we serve. So I'm glad that you brought that point up. And of course you wear a number of different hats. You are the assistant director, but you're also an academic coach. And I already know how difficult it is just to have one role where you might have a number of things in terms of your job responsibilities. And of course, we know other things get added to that throughout the year, but you wear two hats. So can you kind of speak to what are the challenges of both of those hats, and how have you overcome and addressed those challenges?
Wow. So as a assistant director, I have to sometimes impose certain restrictions or procedures, revisit policies, correct behaviors, address certain issues with other staff members. Not to say that because we have a small team, and very rarely do we get into arguments or challenging moments where that would be the case. But in that light, I mean, as an assistant director / academic coach, it's a balancing act in a way, because not only do I have to be responsible for the reporting aspect of the program, fill the space of the director when she's absent, but also fulfill the role as an academic coach in scheduling coaching sessions with students on an ongoing basis, reaching out to other departments on campus and making sure and solidifying those relationships are ongoing. And then in turn, making sure that the needs of my other colleagues are met. So yeah, sometimes, I mean, there's a huge amount of responsibility when it comes to time management and task-oriented duties, which on a daily basis. So in some cases, yes, it takes the back burner, and you would have to put it off for another day or two. It may give you, it may take you a little longer in my dual capacity to answer emails as readily as I would think I should. But overall, everyone's understanding of my dual role, and the students understand this as well, even though I don't voice that much, that I'm the assistant director when they come to the office, because it's non-relative to what their needs are. in most cases, they come to my office because they need a coach. They need someone to talk to. They need someone to support them in their issues and with their instructors or with their assignments, and kind of pinpointing and assessing their discrepancies or needs. So yeah, so it's a challenge, but I'm up for it because of, like you mentioned, I have a diverse background. It works into my advantage, of course, because of the training that I've had in my leadership program. But it also works in my challenge because I've worked in alternative settings. We have students on our campus that come with underlying issues that haven't been diagnosed. They have deficiencies that still need to be addressed. They have ongoing challenges with their coursework because it's at a much more advanced level than what they were expecting, especially as an incoming freshman or a non-traditional student that had been out of school for a number of years. So we run the gamut on the number of types of cases we have in our program. So yes, it's a major challenge, but being the type of person that I am, as far as being atypical in my approach with scheduling and being structured and following the rules to the T and not bending much and sticking to and consistently sticking to the program, it kind of falls into place where we don't have major hiccups, and there's some ebbs and flows that we can work out. And I rely heavily, which I've been trained to as well, on the strengths of my colleagues as well. And as leaders, if you're going as an educator, if you're going into a leadership role, you have to understand when and how to delegate duties, and when and how to step back, give the praise and the recognition to others, let them step up and take on the role, and just motivate them and encourage them to push it forward, because not one individual can do it all by themselves. And yeah,
cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Brother Bocage, you just gave a masterclass on leadership. There's a few things you just said. It made me think about a quote. The quote goes, "Leadership is not the title you have, but what you do when the opportunity presents itself." And you talked about students when they come to you. You're not touting, "I'm the assistant director." They come into you as a coach, and you understand like the servant leadership that's involved with working with students, and then leveraging the strengths of your team. I think that's something this year I've probably really come to grips with more, knowing that I cannot be the best at everything, nor should I. There's going to be teammates who are stronger in different areas, and a great leader leverages those strengths. So can you speak to, because I'm sure like you've grown as a leader over your time. You didn't start off there. Like, what was there a moment, or was there a process around your growth around that mindset of what true leadership is, and understanding how to leverage your team? Can you maybe speak to what that process looked like for you over the course of your career?
Oh, wow. So if I would think back, one of those aha moments, or a moment that drastically shifted the paradigm between me just being the educator and me stepping above and beyond just that aspect into a more profound leadership role, would have to be, I would say, maybe about 10 to 12 years ago, where I was afforded the chance of not only sitting in committee meetings and administrative related meetings, but also taking on the role as directorship when the director was out, and not only in trio, but also when I had a role with at Xavier University. So I failed to mention that I worked at a number of university settings, some being predominantly white institutions, and some being historically Black institutions. So I've seen both sides of the spectrum, and I can tell you that at that moment about 10 years ago, when they were, it was kind of like it was kind of like a hot seat moment almost, as if, okay, you stepped into this role. Now, first of all, how would you address this, that, and the other when it comes to this case? It was a case-by-case issue with certain students, and they had some sort of complaints against professors. So there were grievances. There were certain cases where a person's character came into question, and I had to dig into the toolbox. I said, okay, as a leader, how would I answer this in a way where it wouldn't be too forceful, but it would get my point across, and it would also address the issue in a way where it wouldn't look as if it was just one-dimensional. So I kind of took on the characteristics that I have, that it's innate in me already, to know that I'm a very humble person. I sometimes I pause, and I only speak when it's necessary. Right. And I try to lead by example first, and then speak. See, sometimes people think that you have to get in front of a podium or have talking points or go over an agenda and voice what you stand for and what your key points are. But like they say, your reputation precedes you even before you walk into the room. So my reputation was already intact. So by the time I gained those temporary leadership roles about 10 years ago, they already knew the type of person I was. They already knew what I can bring to the table. They pretty much knew, based on previous conversations, how I would address situations and certain occurrences. So that piece just fell into place. And I never looked back at that point. I really never changed course. I never derailed. I mean, at that point, I knew that there was a place and a position for me. I knew that I had solidified who I was as a person, as well as the role that I held. And it meshed together. And ever since then, that was pretty much what set me on the path that I am today.
Man, so it sounds like to me, you always had a leadership disposition about yourself. You weren't just thinking, okay, now I'm ready to assume a leadership position. Let me start to think about what it means to be a leader in this capacity. So when you stay ready, so you ain't have to get ready.
That's right. But in some cases, people have the fallacy of thinking that, oh, you're going to be born a leader. But I have a different outlook on that. Yes, you could have the capacity, possibly, or the characteristics of becoming one, but that has to be molded. You have to shadow someone or be mentored by someone. You have to be formally trained in certain areas. You just can't fall into the seat. It just doesn't work that way. It has to come together as a perfect storm. Now, the ones that don't have those qualities at a much earlier age in their life, and are not that alpha type of personality where it would kind of project them in a facet where people would look for them always to give them advice, or to come to them and to confide in them because of their trust values and their moral compass. All of that sometimes comes natural, but in other cases, sometimes you have to kind of embellish that and kind of sponge off of others in a way where it becomes a part of who you are as well. But in order to do that, you have to clean your plate. You have to, dissolve a lot of things in personal attributes that you may have to just dismiss in order to make room for the great qualities that you are trying to inherit. So you can't have both. You can't flip-flop. And I've always been known to stay the course. I've always known been known to be trustworthy, been loyal, and I stick to that. Keeping my word, all of that matters, all of it. So that's pretty much what I stand by. It's pretty much a lot of the life rules or value systems that I put in place for myself a long time ago, and it never failed.
Staying true to those values, and I 100% agree with you. Leadership has to be developed. It's one thing to have the mindset and the capacity or the potential for leadership. It's another thing to know, and like there's skill in leadership. And the one way to learn that is you have to study under great leaders. And like you said, as a sponge, you can absorb that. You can be taught explicitly, here's how great leaders think. And more importantly, here's the decisions and the choices that great leaders make. And that process of growth is not one that is not going to feel good, because great leaders aren't about making themselves feel good, but they're about making sure that their team is successful. And honestly, great leadership is about being great with people. Yes. Right? Great by serving people. And if you can do that well, you can be a great leader. But there's definitely, I've probably learned more in this last year or two around leadership, having to lead a team, than I have certainly in college and in my previous role where I wasn't managing a team. What might make you a great leader in one respect or position or role doesn't necessarily make you a great leader in another position or role. But it might give you a solid foundation. But it's certainly, you have to continue to level up those leadership skills, your leadership tool belt. So I can appreciate you really naming that and talking about what it really takes to be a leader.
Yeah, and listen, after you finish with any program or degree or credential or training, it just doesn't stop there. I mean, in a lot of cases, you'll find that you can learn more by just listening and observing from others. And you can grow so much exponentially outside of the classroom space or the formal training space. I mean, I've learned so much from those, not only in authoritative figures, but also in a lot of my colleagues and my counterparts, those who had those leadership qualities, but kind of brushed them aside and thought that, oh, this is just not for me. I may just be naturally this way, but I don't find myself to lead a group. So I found myself even encouraging those individuals in the workplace by saying, you can do this. We can do this together. Sometimes just follow my lead, and then at some point I will encourage you to take the lead, and let's work together to get this job done. Because at the end of the day, it boils down to, how can we accomplish our goals? What is the objective? What is and how can we move this program or whatever the company or the mission, whatever, stick to the mission, stick to your objectives. Try not to fray away too much away from it. But sometimes it as a leader, you can also understand, and as an educator, you'll notice that sometimes it's good to take the road less traveled, even if that means taking 2 steps backwards, because sometimes, a failure is key of learning. It's necessary, to be honest with you. But then I'm also under the mantra that it's also better to learn from other people's mistakes than your own. But in order to do that, you have to humble yourself in a way where you have to be open enough to recognize other people's mistakes before you make the same one yourself. So yeah.
Absolutely. Leadership is not saying, I'm gonna put everything on my back and I'm gonna get it done. And you talked about hitting goals. We have objectives, and I know in the TRIO space and student support services, there's a lot of accountability around hitting goals. So can you speak to what's the strategy, the technique, the system that you use to ensure at the beginning of the year, y'all fully intend to hit on all those student outcomes? What does it take from the beginning to the end of a year, what system or strategy do you use to ensure that y'all are making progress and win on those goals at the end of the year? Just kind of walk us through your process.
Yeah, so it would be quarterly, and I can tell you personally, with our program, we have 300 students, Fred. So that means, if you can imagine, according to our bylaw in our objectives and our regs and laws that we follow, regulations. Yes, there are certain services that are supposed to be imposed and initiated within the program that we have to meet a certain percentage of. So usually it's around that 2/3 mark for at least 4 or 5 different types of services that we offer, that the government, the U.S. Department of Education, are expecting us to meet. So as a team, we congregate twice a month with staff meetings, and sometimes we jokingly say that these staff meetings are elongated because of the amount of information that we need to make sure we cover. So say, for instance, we're about to start a semester. This is January. By mid-February, according to our techniques and the structure that we have in place within our policy and procedure manual that we have formulated, we have a certain amount of weeks from the time the student starts up until maybe about 14 to 21 days into the semester, to make sure that the student has some sort of pre-evaluation, that they've made some sort of contact with their academic coach, some sort of contact with their professors outside of class course time periods, and that they are making sure that they are attending our workshops and seminars to help them with time management, as well as tutoring. So it's multifaceted. But what we found, of course, through study and the way models are set up, it specifically shows you that students who do poorly within a semester's time period usually do poorly because within those first 3 weeks or so, they haven't contacted anyone in the support services structure. So we make it a point to kind of hit that point home with students. We send out blasts through emails, through text messaging systems, through Microsoft Teams. We even get to the point sometimes, if we find students that are lacking in those areas from those early alert windows, that we even go out physically to their classroom spaces to see that you remember who we are. This is why we're here. This is the reason why you joined this program. And the main reason why this program exists is to make sure that you persist, that you are retained, and that you graduate within 4 to 6 years. If you're not with the program, then we have to address this and revisit what your expectations are, and have pretty much a reality check at that point. Because by the time midterm exams come, it's too late. Mm. And we do a pre-midterm evaluation as well. And we're finding that very often those who have not met with us within those first couple of weeks are the same ones that are failing courses, that are anticipating dropping a course because they haven't been attending, or they fell short of completing assignments, or they haven't been utilizing professors' office hours. All of those components that we stress from day one during their orientation. So I think I covered a lot of the techniques and approaches. And again, this is a collaborative effort. It's nothing that the coach can do. I mean, we have a study skills coordinator on staff. Even our program director sits in sometimes because she's a licensed counselor and has one-on-ones with them. Or she would even sit in on some of the coaching sessions if one of the coaches may be out for some reason or another. So yeah, I mean, we approach this thing as if it's as we call ourselves team members. It's truly a team effort. That's the only way this type of program will work.
It takes a village. It
Yes, it
definitely
does.
takes a village. And I want you to double down on something, zoom in a little bit on something you said, because oftentimes, I want to say oftentimes, there are students who will engage, who will see the value in the program, who will do the things that you're asking them to do, and take action on the next steps that they have. And then you have a group of students who they're involved, but they're not engaging, right? They're not following through on the things that they need to. Can you speak to what are maybe some of your strategies or things that you found worked to get that student who's not engaging at the level that they need to really see the value of student support services that ultimately helps them to have the type of semester that they want?
I would definitely, with addressing that question or that topic, I would be remiss if I didn't say that also a part of this team are our participants. They don't know it, but at that very moment, we rely on the peer-to-peer mentorship or the peer-to-peer interaction to help that student realize that no, sometimes the messaging and the motivation will come from your fellow classmate or your participant, not from the coach and the director and the study skills coordinator. So we would kind of link them together based on their major, classification, gender, whatever their interests are personally, just to make sure that they're a good fit. We even encourage our tutors that we hire to have this, what our study skills coordinator came up with, was called a divide and conquer system, where each tutor is responsible for contacting on a regular basis at least 30 students, and we have 10 tutors. So if you do the math, it's 300, right? And not only do they tutor, but they reach out to students to see what their concerns are, their ongoing issues, their dilemmas, whether or not they just need some basic study skill tips or some help with completing a research paper, those types of things. Just some intrusive, constructive feedback is all a student needs sometimes. They don't need this, prolonged coaching session that lasts an hour to go over an entire academic plan and prescription to get to their immediate issue. And in some cases, that immediate issue may be, oh, well, I miscommunicated with my professor, or I overlooked an email that they sent, or I didn't check Moodle as often as I should have. Maybe I need to go back and check those assignments. And in some cases, that's what it is. They missed an assignment. They don't check their emails regularly. And they just need just a personal boost just to get them through a couple of days or a week for them to get back on track. So that's it's worked. It's been successful.
Leveraging those relationships that already exist between students, you're right. Sometimes you just need a different voice that might be relaying the same messages, but it lands different when it's that peer to peer. And y'all, I've interned in Southern University's office at New Orleans, and this works. I've seen it work. So if this is something, a model that maybe y'all have tested and haven't been successful yet, keep at it. Keep at it, and I'll make sure by the end of this interview, maybe we find ways to connect with Brother Bocage so that other offices that want to really leverage this piece of the model can experiment, but also implement it with some proven practices. Now, something we talked about earlier was that village, right? And of course, you're leveraging all the expertise within your office, but then there's also so many other offices on a college campus that I'm sure y'all connect with and partner with. That helps to enhance your programming, helps to enhance their programming, and ultimately helps to enhance the experience for the student. So can you speak to what collaborations with other offices on campus have looked like, and how have you and your office maximized those to make sure that students are achieving to the level that they want to achieve and that you want them to achieve?
Oh, so I mean, without even hesitating, I can tell you that on an ongoing basis, we remain in contact with the financial aid office. We remain in contact with academic affairs, which we go under that umbrella of academic affairs anyway, and student affairs. But we also rely on the registrar for records, as well as each individual department. But just to hone in a little bit more on financial aid, they've helped us as well as the university conference and college, as well as the within academic affairs and those success coaches over there. We found that the students who are for pretty much every semester, we have strengthened our relationship to the extent of receiving immediate reports on students that have been placed on suspension or probation. We have received notices of students that fall within our program that need to complete academic appeal processes, where they would be asked to complete an application with a letter stipulating the reasons why they faulted and why they need some sort of reinforcement to get to put them back on track to become to be placed back into good academic standing. So in that case, like you mentioned earlier, relationships are very important. And it works reciprocal. So it's reciprocal in a way where not only do we ask them for resources and reports and for feedback from their offices, but when it comes time for us to offer certain students in our program who hold those qualities, especially in student affairs, they are always asking, because we have a great track record of producing leaders for ourselves. So for the very longest, we've had the majority of our students on campus who serve in student government. They are a part of student support services. Those students who run for office or who were awarded the chance and privilege to serve on the Royal Court for homecoming are from student support services. Those students who professors are in need of for fulfilling their quota for internships or research or assistantship or whatever the case may be, they look toward us. Even in the case of community service, we have to sign up students for certain events within the city. Do you have the number of students that will be willing to sign up, because we need them by tomorrow? So we have the go-to list of students at our disposal, because they know that unlike no other program on campus, we can reach out and touch our students at any given moment. The students treat us as if we are their extended family. So they come to us for the most personal problems, but they also come to us just for a time to just relax and exhale. And that kind of benefits us in a way, because when we need them, they'll say, without a doubt, I'm here for you. We're trying to recruit students right now as we speak, Fred, and I've called on maybe about 2 or 3 students within this past couple of days to say, can you go and post the flyers on campus? Can you go and reach out to certain classmates or friends and tell them to come and join our program, because we have to meet our numbers to remain in compliance. So it's crucial. It's very critical to have healthy relationships with not only students, but your colleagues on campus throughout all areas of the campus, back office and administration, from top to bottom.
Yeah, that mutual benefit that you spoke to, like, of course, there's information that you're able to leverage because of the relationship, but you also understand there are objectives and outcomes that those other offices are trying to achieve as well. And you can tap into your student base and leverage that relationship as well. And also knowing it's just not transactional, that you are adding value to that student's experience and being that extended family. That's so important. So it could be a safe space, so it could be a brave space for students to just come in and be themselves, and also know that they're going to be pushed, but also be given a number of different different opportunities. That is super important.
Very much important. Yes. Yeah.
And the other thing it made me want to think of is not every TRIO program, not every office has those relationships yet. And so can you give advice to that office where maybe they don't know, how do I establish that level of relationship with financial aid? How do we gain that level of relationship with other offices? What will be that step-by-step process or your guidance to them on how to establish that relationship initially and foster it in a way where it doesn't become transactional, but there's some actual, there's some getting to know, and there's that mutual benefit amongst each other. How does a program go about establishing that?
Very simple. And to be candid, treat a person as if they were your own relative or friend outside of the realm of the university. Go by their name, not their social security number or their student ID. That matters to the student. And they have a preconceived notion, first of all, on the office itself and what it stands for. So if you could kind of unveil that and push your day-to-day operations aside a bit and kind of meet the person where they are, have a casual conversation with them, even if it's for a few minutes. I think that would lead to so much of a healthy outcome. So when it's time for you to get in touch with them or bring them to the desk or the office again to discuss with them their FAFSA or their academic standing or the rigor of a course or a program, they will be more open to that, because now they see you as a person, not just as an authority figure. And in many cases, students come to college with the fear of believing that just because a person has a PhD or an advanced degree of some sort, that they have some sort of complex, and that they have a superiority complex where they believe that they're better than the person that's a 18 or 19-year-old. And I can honestly tell you that in some cases that may be true, but we empower the students within our program to make them understand that now you are an adult. By law, you're an adult, and also the way you carry yourself, the way you're supposed to interact with professors or any other support staff on campus. Don't go into an office space, first of all, not prepared with at least 2 or 3 questions. Do not go in with your hand out, but with an open mindset where you can pose questions in order to have a dialogue to leave with an answer. But don't leave the impression to a person in any office space or any professor that you are there just to sponge off or kind of leech in some senses, cases where you're only there to take instead of give and provide. So we really encourage and push students to read their handbook, to spend time outside of class, to read chapters, to prepare for your class, not to go into class ill-prepared, where to sit in class. All of those things matter. And for those who follow that formula, it's been a success.
Yeah, those soft skills, I feel like those soft skills are the last thing on a totem pole for students. They're worried about the academic habits, and it's just like, be good with people, and you can get very far in life by just being a good people person and having good people skills and communication skills, and just being able to like meet somebody where they are. Like that is such that's so important to building a relationship. If I just genuinely care about this person in front of me, that is going to be felt, right? And of course, there's still other things, more tangible things that you'll be able to get and benefit from that relationship. But it really all starts with connecting. Just start with understanding.
It's connected. Yeah. Eye contact for one, a smile ever so often. Giving that person the attention, not looking down at your phone, asking the person how is their day going. There's a value or a way that we use in my mentorship program that I belong to, and one of the values that we share with our younger young men is treat others as if you would need them tomorrow. In other words, don't burn bridges. Treat a relationship as if it's gold, and cherish that. So you can always call upon a person, even if it's been some voided space or time, and time has elapsed. You can pick up the phone. They can recognize who you are. They can remember the previous conversation you've had, and you can just pick up where you left off. But in many cases, students have to understand it's a gradual process, and there's a science behind communication, where you would have to understand, okay, you don't go into an office space and the first thing out of your mouth is, I need this, or I'm missing this. I mean, that's a total turn off to any professor on any campus, because that kind of, it diminishes, it almost discredits the value of instruction and the course and what they've spent so many years of their life specializing in, that you just pretty much find it to be secondary. So that's another form of communication that we try to kind of dismiss from them, is never go into a course and state or think that just because it's not a part of my major, that it doesn't matter. Every course matters, or else it wouldn't be on your curriculum. And that's the whole aspect. That's the whole reasoning behind the meaning of university, is to mesh and collect. There are people that sat at tables and planned out this entire curriculum over time to make sure that every course that falls in your curriculum has a purpose to fulfill. And if students attack those courses and approach the course in a way or in that fashion, then I think they would become a much better student over the course of those 4 years.
For sure. Now on the flip side, right? On the flip side, and I know you've been in the field long enough, so I know you know this. Sometimes that adult to adult relationship, that professional to professional relationship, can be tough to navigate. And I noticed you talked about having that relationship with financial aid, having that relationship with professors, and sometimes adults, they bring certain things to that professional relationship that prevents students from being successful. So what would be your advice for that office or that professional that's trying to build with financial aid, or trying to build with another professional in another department to figure out what that mutual benefit should be? Is it the same thing that you advise students on, or what's the difference in navigating that professional to professional relationship?
Cool. Oh wow, well that's a different animal, because now you're dealing with professionals that have prior experiences, mishaps, challenges, deficiencies that have been overlooked or kind of pushed under the table a bit, and now you're asking them to kind of to correlate with other departments, and as a third party, I can tell you that when in the past, when I kind of coordinated efforts to bring other departments together, sure, they've had disputes and they've had disagreements, but ultimately we came to a consensus because, first of all, we allowed them to voice their opinions on matters and perceptions that they thought of for the other department, and vice versa. And then we moved and shifted from there to the point where, okay, let's become solution-based now for the best interest of the student, right? How can we resolve this issue so we can move on to the next? And I found that I think constructing probing questions helped tremendously. Like say, for instance, if it was a person that was representing financial aid and they were trying to communicate effectively with someone who was in well, let's say a department of any department, and they were trying to explain to that professor or department chair that this student needs you to sign off on their attendance so we can release their funding. And this happens, unfortunately, it happens often where professors overlook it because they're so entrenched in their instruction that they overlook the back procedure of fulfilling that requirement to be then transferred over to the financial aid office for the student to then be financially sound in order to receive their funds to pay for school. See, everything is interlinked. So, you know, there's a way where you have to approach it in a way where a professor has to understand the importance of that part of their job duties, not overshadowing their instruction, but to make them understand that if the student doesn't get their financial aid in time, then they will be purged, and then you would lose a student. So it's all a domino effect. And ultimately, I mean, with the help of us, of some student support services and support staff like myself, then they came to a reality that, yes, let me just make sure this is fulfilled. So the likelihood would increase of that student remaining in my class. And to make sure that the financial aid office at that point receives all the documentation that's needed in order for them to release the funds. But again, that's a reoccurrence. And it tends to kind of appear almost every semester where we would find a number of students having those types of issues. So, but yeah, that to answer your question, it's asking probing questions to get to the point where they fully understand the total outlook of why they exist in the first place, because the students, you know, you can't award a student federal funds if they don't show up for class. It just doesn't, and the students have to understand that too, because they're expecting their refund checks, but they don't understand that they have to show up and be accounted for. So yeah, and that's just one scenario of many.
Right. I'm sure we could have did the whole podcast just on that one topic, and a few things that you named that when we dive deeper, it's like you really don't think about that in terms of establishing a relationship, is having that level of curiosity to ask probing questions, recognizing where there might be knowledge gaps. And I thought one real key that I definitely didn't think of was when we think about that mutual benefit, it's also thinking about like, how does this benefit the professor? How does this potentially benefit the outcome of that staff member in financial aid, and recognizing, yes, we're gonna learn together, but there is a clear benefit for both of us helping to coordinate this thing happening, or this document being processed in a timely manner. I'm sure there are still going to be moments where, like, yes, trio, I need this for X, Y, and Z, or the professor needs this for X, Y, and Z. But it's recognizing even within that process what the ripple effect eventually could be or is on that professor, on that staff member, and how y'all can work together to make that happen. So that's a really, really, really good point. And I'm sure not something that happens overnight. There's going to be some trial and error, but as long as you approach that with a level of humility and seeking to understand and just being clear and having that clarity, then eventually you get there. But like you say, it comes up every semester, but that also doesn't make you shy away from having those conversations, still being just as curious and leveraging those relationships where you can. So thank you for continuing to put in that work. We're going to switch gears a little bit with this question. is, again, even with all the things you named, the collaboration within your office, leveraging those students to then have the relationship and engage other students, leveraging other offices. Even with all of that, right, there are still challenges that we can't, and having, I won't say we can't, that are still really tough to overcome. So if you could wave your magic wand and education could be forever changed so that those minoritized students are the students who are the most successful, who are persistent, who are graduating at the highest rates, what would you wave your magic wand and do in the field of education?
It's no one answer to that. It would have to have multiple answers to that. One would be to assess and evaluate the deficiency of the student from the onset, at the beginning. As the notion said, it's easier to correct and uplift the person from the infancy stages than to correct and restore someone who has been damaged. And you know, we've seen so many students that have been not only misguided and mistreated, but overlooked and misdiagnosed over their K through 12 experiences. So by the time they reach the college stage and environment, they're so far behind, especially when it comes down to the expectations of the professor. And that's where the clashing starts, is the student is crying out and they are trying to explain themselves, but the professor has this curtain, ironclad, almost as if, you know, I'm not here to console you and take care of your personal needs. I was hired to teach a course because of my expertise in this field, or this subject matter. And you know, if I could wave a magic wand, I would definitely, in that case, it would almost be a requirement for any professor or any instructor to get some sort of soft skills training or some sort of teaching methodology course. Because as you know, I mean, most professors are not trained to be educators. They're not teachers, they're professors. So there's a difference. And students who fall underneath that identity that you just mentioned has this notion, and they even recognize professors as teachers, and they call them Mr. and Miss instead of professor or doctor. So there's a disconnect there, just in the language and the way that they address their professors or the person in charge. So yes, I would make sure it's mandatory for every instructor on every college campus to reevaluate that and make sure, just like any other course or certification that we have to go through as an employee, just like ethics training, let them go through some sort of hourly training or CEUs, just like any other licensed counselor would have to, as a professor. That would be a condition of employment. But on the flip side, on the student side, I would say that I would help them grow within building character and helping them understand who they are as a person. What are their strengths and weaknesses? And not, that sounds cliche, strengths and weaknesses, we throw that around a lot, but when I say strengths and weaknesses, I not only mean academically, but personally. How do you go about your day-to-day operation? What makes you a better person? I mean, are you a poor time manager? Do you procrastinate? Do you tend to be a pessimist? Do you look at things half full or half empty? Do you go about your life in mediocrity, or do you search for answers? Do you like challenges? All of those things matter. especially when dealing with the college student, they have to understand that from the onset. But it gives us a challenge. It gives us more of a challenge because we have to accept students the way they are, and we have to work with that. As unfinished, unpolished, we have to bring them from point A to point B. And a lot of hiccups occur during that process. But if I had the wand, I would say I would set in place a structure or a system where a student, it's a must that students receive mental health counseling, that they receive academic coaching, just like what I serve as. Every student should have an academic coach, no matter if they belong to student support services or not. And that they understand their finances and are financially literate. And that's one topic that we didn't cover, but we're finding that that's one of the common denominators with students' stress levels, frustration, dropout rates, indebtedness, just overall students' outlook on college. For that component always falls as variable within that. And we have to empower our students to take control of their finances and become better stewards of their dollar. Not only in the present time, but planning for the future beyond graduation. So, and all of that, I find to be that, college is, like you mentioned, it's relationship building, but it's also building from within too. You have to develop and evolve, or the journey is a waste. If you're the same person that you were as a freshman, then I don't know if you skated through, you cheated your way through, you just bypassed it, or you just leaned on someone else to push you through. But in most cases, that is not usually the outcome for most college students. I mean, you can see the growth patterns over time, and it's not just the maturation of the person, it's just becoming enveloped within the system itself. That's the other reason why college is here, is to kind of help a person grow personally as well through their interactions with others and joining groups and organizations, and all of that is key. So we stress that to students as well. That's the wand that I'm waving. I want to make sure that students belong to at least one club or organization before they graduate, to equip themselves with more than just completing coursework. They have to become all-around individual. And that's not just to land jobs. That's even if they are becoming business owners and entrepreneurs like yourself, right? It's all about ongoing growth. Growth is inevitable. I mean, it's ongoing. Yeah. So there's a few wands there, Fred, that I want to. Yeah, but I have a lot to wave, but just for it to come to fruition, just one step at a time, one generation, to leave my impact, leave just, even if it's just a percentage of who I am, genuinely who I am, to that, outside of the realm of just my positions and why I come to work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. That's the type of impact that I would like to for it to sustain over time.
And the personal development piece is so important. If you're a student that's just focused on going to class, making good grades, and just getting your degree, there's so many you're missing so many opportunities in college. And as much as I'll just be frank with you, I was not prepared as a teacher when I graduated college, but I felt like I was prepared because of the experience that I had to connect with young people, like to do the parts of education. Let me say, I wasn't fully prepared as a teacher. There's some things you can only learn by teaching. Right?
Yes,
Being in front of a group of 30 to 35
that's
students
right.
in that classroom, but the experience, the relationships I built, the identity, the self-identity that I built, that is super, super important. So I'm glad you named that. And also I'm glad you said it, because I've been saying this for a minute too, and nothing against our professors. Y'all have a ton of expertise in the field, but being a teacher is a skill. It's an art
Yes,
and a skill. And if you're not, just like a singers are classically trained and can have a range, you know, they can sing within the range or have a wide range. The same is true of teaching. It is an art and a skill, and there's a right way to do it, and there's certainly a wrong way or ineffective way to do it. So I love that, the wands that you wave, because that will forever transform education, for sure.
absolutely.
For sure.
Yes,
For
I'm
sure.
glad you agree with that. Yeah.
So my last question for you, right? You've done a ton of work in the field already. I know you have had a profound impact on students and the staff that you serve. When it's all said and done, when you hang up your hat, when you're moving on, and you know you're going to be golfing or however you want to spend your time as a retiree, what do you want to say your legacy was in yeah, just period. What do you want to say your legacy was?
My legacy would be that I was a person that, without a doubt, looked within the person and saw them for who they were, and provided a chance for them to grow during our time of growth together, and imposed my values and morals in a way to the young generation, specifically the young Black male, because I have so much of a passion for them, to find their mark and identity within society, to make a difference for the next generation. And that's the saying that we follow in our mentorship group, which generations depend on me. And for them to understand that although a certain sect or certain group of people may identify them or portray them to be a certain way or fulfill a certain image, doesn't necessarily mean that they have to agree to that. You charter your own path. That's what I would like to leave. That's what I would like people to remember about me, is that I stayed constant in my messaging. I remain passionate in growing and pushing and encouraging the next generation. And that I was a person that looked beyond just the spectrum of just my personal family, but the community as a whole. I was a servant, and I'm a servant leader for sure, in the true sense of the word. I don't mind doing the hard labor, but I don't mind taking the lead and delegating. I don't mind sitting at the top of the chain and making sure that the agenda is pushed forward for the betterment of the group. But I don't mind serving food or going out and picking up trash or helping others in need. So no matter what the case. So that's what I'm hoping that people remember of me. So yeah.
Man, thank you, Brother Bocage. Thank you so much. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being transparent. Thank you for the way you show up and the way that you do the work. This interview has been great. For those of you that are watching this, look, take this information and make sure you implement it, right? Make sure you take some time to really digest it and implement it. I'm going to be bringing you episodes every week. One last question for you, Brother Bocage. Is there a way for people to reach you or contact you if they want to pick your brain more about the strategies, your mindsets, just any of the things you talked about today? What's maybe the best way for people to reach out to you and connect?
Sure, they can. Well, you can put my email in my office number in the chat, but I can say it as well. Of course, I work during the introduction. You stated it. I work at Southern University of New Orleans. So my email address is D as in David, G as in George, Bocage, B as in boy, OCAGE, at suno.edu, and my number at the office is 504-286-5103. 504-286-5103. I'm usually available from Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Please leave a message or send me an email. Introduce yourself so we can start that and start the communication there, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thank you again. We're going to stay connected, stay tapped in, and y'all stay tuned for the next episode of the College Access and Persistence Podcast. Have a good one.